Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review for you. Thanks to Bite Sold 2, who just recently sent this to me. This is from Dark Horse Comics, We Have Demons, issue number 2. It is written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo, inks by Jonathan Glapion, colors by Dave McCain, and then letters by Tom Napolitano. I had heard kind of mixed reviews on this issue because it's been out for quite a while, maybe I think 4 weeks back or maybe 3 weeks back. But incidentally, I end up loving it. I love the art, I love the story. It still got me hooked to the next issue, which I already have, and I will review that as soon as I get that read. But let's get into this one. Honestly, the art's, I mean, if you know Greg Capullo's art, it's on par with everything he's done, if not some of his best. I don't know, it's hard to say what's his best, but, you know, I mean, there's some great art in this book. But basically, this issue, the first issue is all told through Lamb, and she was trying to explain everything between the different factions in the book, the Horn, which is the bad element, and Halo, which is the good element. In this issue, it's all told from Gus, which is Lamb's father's best friend, which is, he's part demon, as you can see here. We find out quite a bit in this book, a lot of lore that goes into this world. We find out that their team that they have shown in the first book and this book are called the Glories, since they are all working for Halo. I would say not really working, but they are all faith-based. They also explain that just because, you know, it's Halo, it has like a Christian representation. Gus explained that the faith-based weapons that they use don't necessarily have to be a religious faith, base that they, fuel their faith weapons out of. It could be faith in family, faith in like a fictional comic book. I mean, anything faith-driven literally powers their weapon. Problem is, most people lose that faith along, life, depending on the road they take and choices they make and stuff like that, and life gets harder. We all tend to lose faith in certain situations. It's quite normal. So in the issue, Gus and the Glories are taking Lamb out, and they're basically they're training her because she's supposed to be the next big badass fighter. Her father, Cash Cullen, I think his name is, or Cleaver, or something like that, was one of the better fighters within the Glories. He's one of the more famous, and then Gus being his right-hand man. I'm pretty sure they were a devastating team within the, against Horn. Basically, they're out here trying to train Lamb to get her faith weapon activated. It hasn't activated yet since they've given it to her because she's lacking the faith to activate it. They basically show her that demons can be anything, not just people. They have to be living, but it could be like a bug, a mammal, like a person, many things nowadays. And they do explain that back in the day that the demons were once just strictly people, but now over time, either Horn is getting desperate or they're just using different tactics, but now they're able to control basically anything living on the planet. They don't go into plant life and stuff like that, but who knows? But they do show right here, this is one demon, and they've infected this thing specifically to train Lamb, but it's an armadillo. She finds it kind of insulting because one of her nicknames from her dad was Dillo. And the reason he picked that nickname for her was because armadillos were supposed to be like strong, angry, hardcore animals kind of thing, and it basically described his daughter. She is still lacking the faith to pull out her weapon, and Gus quickly goes over that it doesn't necessarily have to be the religious faith that I went over before. She kind of quits, and Gus kind of gives her a heart-to-heart, and kind of gets more into the explanation about, why he's kind of in, because she starts asking him, Dad, were you always a demon, how did you get involved with Halo kind of thing, and they go back into his backstory. Another thing that is brought up, because he keeps, since the first book, and they don't really explain it then, but every time she cusses, and there's a lot of curse words, but every time she cusses specifically, Gus kind of says that thing, language. Well, he finally says why, and it's because it's the language of demon folk, and the more you use it, you have a tendency to attract the demon folk, stuff like that. I'm just showing random art from the comic, but basically this is Gus's backstory. He shows that he once was a human and eventually went out to it, and then they show from thousands and thousands of years. He claims he's the oldest creature on the earth, and they do show that he's Neanderthal, because it says like over 100,000 years ago is when he was living. Eventually he gets lost in some storm, frozen, and we found out that right before he was frozen, he doesn't remember it, but somehow he had tangled with a demon and got infected, but because he was frozen it like slowed the process somehow, and he didn't fully turn into a demon. Later on, years later, Glory had ended up finding him in the frozen depths and thawed him out of the ice, and later like finding out that he was like half demon half human, kind of basically kept him in captivity because they didn't know what to do with him. He could still speak and stuff like that. He wasn't like a normal demon, but then again he was still like basically at this time he was in berserk mode where he was full on demon. He could kill anything and he wanted to kill everything. Eventually we meet a young Cash, and Cash is the one who eventually kind of gives Gus back his humanity, and it's actually from a piece of her dad's axe, a piece of the faith-based weapon, and he breaks it off and he literally makes a halo for Gus, and it gives back his humanity. While he wears the halo, he doesn't have the blood drive that the normal demon does. In retrospect, he has a lot of similarities with Hellboy, minus the comedy. That he's more like a stern Hellboy, and he kind of even mentions that his name means like creature that like kills all or something like that, or can kill all or something like that. Because she asked about his name on the door, they found that his dad had written Hell, and we found out like his original name is like Helva or something like that, and translated from demon folk or something like that, it means like the creature that can kill anything or something like that. They do go into all the training and stuff that Gus and Cash eventually went into working for Glory, and eventually how they became the great team that they were, and eventually like how Gus, not Gus, but Cash eventually met his wife, had Lamb, and how Gus kind of was like there watching her grow up there, basically her whole life. They do cut back to the current situation after the Gus's backstory, which is altogether pretty dope. It was well written, well thought out. You can tell it was there from the beginning. But we catch back up to him in like regular time, and they're on a plane, and they're supposed to be going to the spot that Cash, while he was alive, had documented that there was going to be like a meteor strike of possible more Halo. It's mentioned by the crew that Cash had like other predictions of Halo landing on Earth so they could get more faith-based weapons, and those other opportunities never happened. So it could be one of those situations where the same thing happened, Cash was wrong, and no Halo comes to Earth. But needless to say, they're on their way there in a plane, and basically she meets the whole crew, like kind of finds out a little more detail about the different teams, where they're located all around the world and stuff like that. Basically they're all together because Cash had died. As they are flying to the location, we see here that another plane flies up, and it looks like normal people at first, but then they start jumping off the plane, and we quickly find out that they are demons, and they basically start wreaking havoc on the plane. I like in and out right there. But basically it's like a fight where basically all the Glories are fighting the demons. They basically fend off the demons. The pilot, Jiro, with who they go into a little detail, but he basically gets killed off because he's at the front of the attack. And after that, like at the end of the attack, the demons manage to go after Gus, and they grab the Halo off, and he goes into like all berserk mode. Lamb does try to like bring him back to his senses and stuff, and the rest of the crew does, hoping that he can overcome his demonness to go back to good old Gus, but it doesn't really happen. He goes in all berserk, and he starts trying to kill everybody. Luckily Lamb finds the Halo, jumps, and like plops it back on his head, and they kind of jump forward, and we see that they have landed. And Gus is back to normal Gus. There's during the fight, there was something significant that kind of happens for a second, but she is able to get the faith-based weapon to activate finally, and it's because she was thinking about her dad. once they've kind of gone back into that, it's revealed that there had to be a traitor on the plane because nobody knew the location, but somehow the demons did. Just like the faith-based weapons, when a faith-based user is close to a weapon, it'll activate. Same thing with the demon. When the demon's blood is close to another demon, it'll activate. So basically, the current leader, it's like she kind of takes the blood and she goes around to the whole group, kind of shown here, and she's hoping it'll activate. Kind of reminds me of the John Carpenter's The Thing with the whole blood scenario. But basically, they go around the whole group, and it finally does activate it. It does look like it is on one member, but nope, it's not. It's something behind the member that they thought it was, and it turns out it's the corpse of her father. Evidently, the thing that killed him, was able to infect him and appeared, that he was dead or whatever, and for some reason in the same house that they're in is where their father is being kept alive. So he activates and comes to life, and it's basically them versus, Cash, and that's basically where the book leaves off. Another thing in this book, it was kind of the same thing they showed in the first book. They showed a lot of behind the scenes, pencil art, stuff like that. In this one, they kind of have the same deal, but it's more detailed than this one. This one, they went over the logo process, how they came up with the logo and the look of the first issue, which is kind of interesting to see all the different designs they came up with. There's a lot in the actual art process, which is really neat. Getting to see Greg Capullo's art and then being inked and after his pencil work. Another really cool thing is in the very back of the book, it actually has every page lined up panel per panel, colored, penciled, inked, everything, just minus the dialogue. But that's basically it, where this issue leaves off. Like I mentioned in the very beginning, I'm really good with this story. So far it has the right amount of action, story, background lore that they're setting up. It seems like everything's set in stone. Like this isn't something he's making up on the fly. It kind of seems like something that he had a long time ago, and he's finally getting to put into a comic book. So I don't know, it just has a real good feeling to me. I've liked it so far. I got the third issue sitting close by. I'm going to go hop into that pretty soon. But hey, this is my review for We Have Demons, issue number 2. Thanks to BitSoul2. Please like, comment, subscribe. Leave your comments down below. What do you think of the second issue? If you did read it, if you didn't pick it up or whatever, what are your thoughts after hearing all this? But hey, I will see y'all later. Y'all have a great weekend, and that's about it. Bah!